Much for joining us tonight. We are delighted to have author and illustrator Gilbert Ford with us to talk about his debut middle grade book, The Mysterious Messenger, that he both wrote and illustrated. Gilbert is joined in conversation tonight with author and Washington Post Kids Post writer Mary Quattlebaum. The Mysterious Messenger is available for purchase tonight. We'll post a book purchase link in the chat shortly. Gilbert's other books, as well as Mary's books, are also available on our website. During this event, you can ask any questions for Gilbert by clicking Q&A located at the bottom of your screen. You can also upvote other attendee questions, and at the end, we'll answer as many audience questions as we can. Now, more about our authors. Gilbert grew up in a family of professional photographers in Jackson, Mississippi. He moved to New York to attend Pratt Institute, where he received a degree in illustration. He's lived and worked in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn for over 20 years and has illustrated numerous best-selling middle grade and award-winning picture books, as well as written and illustrated several picture books. In 2015, he earned a master's degree in writing for children and young adults from the Vermont College of Fine Arts. He's currently editing his second middle grade novel, teaching, and working on a certificate in art education. His debut middle grade, set in Brooklyn, stars 11-year-old Maria, a lonely girl with a big secret, who is under the thumb of her mother, a fake psychic and con artist. Maria gets wrapped up in an epic mystery that combines the literary movement of the Beat poets and art and jazz history. Gilbert is joined by Mary Quattlebaum, an author of picture books, poetry, and novels for kids. She writes for the Washington Post Kids Post and also teaches at the Vermont College MFA program in writing for children and young adults. There, she was the advisor who guided Gilbert through the writing of The Mysterious Messenger. And now, Gilbert and Mary, please take it away.
Margaret, thank you so much. It's just great to see you on screen. And I certainly appreciate Politics and Prose hosting us tonight. Thanks to Margaret and thanks to Carolyn, who is handling tech. And Gilbert, it is great to see you on screen. And you know, Margaret kind of gave us a taste of all the different things that you can turn your hand to. And, you know, as she mentioned, this is the first novel that you have both written and illustrated. So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about where you got the idea. Was it an idea that had been gestating for a long time, or just to, you know, kind of pop into your mind and say, I'm going to write this? What happened?
Sure, I actually prepared a video. So let me do a screen share and I'll share it with everybody. Let's see, share screen. And so let me start it, share, and then play. Okay, thank you Politics and Prose for having me. Thank you Mary, and thank you Margaret for putting this together. I will first start off with a video. It's a little, what is it called? A trailer for the book.
Welcome to Clinton Hill, a neighborhood in Brooklyn with its stately mansions and uneven sidewalks, a place that is hauntingly beautiful, overgrown with ivy that when rustles seems to whisper an enchantment for its neighbors to stay. Tucked in between these Victorian homes is a one-story library, a modern structure that seems out of place with its neighbors. It's the only place that 11-year-old Maria Rousseau is permitted to go. Maria is a lonely girl living in a garden-level apartment of a brownstone with her mother, who is a fake psychic and a con artist. Maria helps out in the family seances and is forbidden to talk to anyone outside her home. But Maria is keeping a big secret from her mother. She really does have psychic abilities and can speak to a ghost named Edward through automatic writing. One day, after Maria's mother cons another helpless widow out of her inheritance, Edward sends Maria on a mission to help a lonely widow find treasure hidden inside her apartment. And so begins the story of The Mysterious Messenger, my debut middle grade novel.
Okay, so that is the book trailer. And this is where I lived in Clinton Hill. I lived in an old Victorian hotel that probably for about, let's see, for about 17 years. And I had many roommates, and most of the early ones thought that maybe the hotel was haunted. I lived in what was considered the dining room, and they had converted it into lofts in the 80s. So this is one of my libraries. It's my reference library for books and typography and design. But I also have another library in my home. I spend a good time reading, less time watching TV, and I'm just kind of one of those kinds of people. And this is where I work. It's my studio. And a lot of my artwork is done digitally on a Cintiq. So I like to draw on the Cintiq, but I also will occasionally hand letter, hand draw, and use watercolors to make the physical media too. So these are some of the children's books that I've illustrated. I got my start in children's books by, well, first I designed and illustrated educational toys. And that ended up leading me into a career in illustrating picture books as well as middle grade books and writing some of my own. My first major books that were shown were, the name of this book is Secret Series, my first big project, and it did pretty well. And I illustrated a lot of the interior illustrations. And yeah, so I think this kind of put me into the middle grade book world. And I ended up doing a lot more of his book covers. Bad Magic was probably the last book that I did the interior illustrations for. And that pretty much, after that, it was a lot of book covers. And what I loved about getting the book cover assignments was that I would get these manuscripts sent to me, and I just loved reading them so much and just fell in love with middle grade books. So I did a lot of mysteries, and then I would do the covers for like the Newbery Honor, and I would do Natalie Lloyd's books and even Chris Gabenstein's books for the Limoncello Library series. But while I was doing these, I liked doing the covers, but I wanted to branch out a little bit. So I ended up enrolling in Vermont College of Fine Arts for the Writing for Children and Young Adults program. And even though I'd kind of gone just to, maybe work on nonfiction picture books and maybe a little bit more fiction picture books, the teachers had encouraged me to start a middle grade novel and write about 20 pages and bring them into the critique group. So the first critique group, I was very nervous, and I had 20 pages written, and I brought it to the group, and it had a pretty good response, and people seemed to like it. And it ended up being what The Mysterious Messenger would later become. And that semester, I worked with Mary. So Mary actually helped me through the novel process for this book. But I got the idea for the story because I had a friend that was a photographer in Brooklyn, and she was photographing spiritualists and mediums and all these kinds of people. And one day she invited me over to her house, and she had someone she wanted me to meet. And it was this woman here from England, and she was a medium. And over dinner, she told us that she had to tell her husband that there was another man in her life, and it was the spirit of Elvis Presley. And she told us the way that she talked to him was through this thing called automatic writing. And she demonstrated it by putting her hand over a plain piece of paper and a pen between knuckles. And she would just kind of move her hand over the paper and let the pen write something. So Elvis wrote her a message, and she read it to us. And yeah, so that was my first experience with a medium. And I found it sort of outrageous a little bit, because why would Elvis contact you from the spirit world? But I began to wonder what a real story would look like if, say, there was a fake psychic named Madame Destine that conned widows out of their inheritance, but there was a daughter named Maria who really could speak to spirits. And instead of speaking to Elvis through automatic writing, it was someone named Edward, because I just felt like that was a little bit more believable. And so that's kind of where the story came from. After that, I came up with a bunch of characters. So I'll go through them a little bit. There was Madame Destine, the con artist psychic, fake psychic, with a parrot named Houdini who mimicked her every word. And then there was Mr. Fox, who was her sidekick that was a super, but he also kind of helped her along with her scams. And then there was Maria, who was her daughter, who really could speak to spirits, but had to keep it secret from her mother. And then there was Mrs. Fisher, the widow who they conned out of her inheritance. But Maria was sent to find a treasure hidden in her apartment by the ghost named Edward, who she talks to. Then there's Sebastian, who lives upstairs from her. He's moved in just recently, and he really wants to be friends with Maria, but he knows there's something's not right at home. He has parents named Mr. and Mrs. Goldstein. And then there's Miss Madigan, who is the librarian at the local Clinton Hill Library. And she's just trying to figure out what on earth is going on in Maria's life because things aren't adding up. So she starts to ask questions, and Maria starts to has to navigate around her so that she doesn't find out what's going on in her life. And then there's Edward, of course. So I started it by working in Scrivener, which is a computer program for writing. And I would just write down a couple of note cards, and then the chapters would be to the left. So, and that's kind of how I just plugged away at the novel. After I finished the rough drafts, I worked with Mary for a little while, and then I ended up finishing the book actually after I was out of grad school in about 2016. And then I shopped it around to agents, and that took a couple of years. And then Carrie Hannigan from HG Agency took interest and wrote me an editorial letter. And so I revised it. And these are kind of the track changes. You can see there's some red where I had to change stuff. And then there's notes to the side of the screen and the document. And then I had that. I probably went through 2 rounds of revisions before we sent it to the editor at Macmillan, who was Christy Ottaviano, and she liked it, and she bought it. And then about a year went by, and then we got the editorial letter, and you can see some of the X's over the paragraphs that I had to fix. So there was like maybe 8 pages of small paragraphs to kind of just fix up the manuscript and get it up to par. And we probably went through about 2 rounds of that. And then we were ready for this, the sketches for the interior illustrations. And I had done so many illustrations for other middle grade novelists that I was really looking forward to doing my own because I had been doing it for everybody else. So here's a sketch to the left, and you'll see kind of a rough of the ghost over Maria. And then to the right is the final, and it was done in India inks and washes over with watercolor. I'm going to show you a quick little video of me painting the interior illustrations. So Mrs. Fisher is the widow in the book who lives in Greenwich Village, and her past is hanging out with the beatniks in the 50s and 60s, and then the jazz scene of that time, and then also the abstract expressionist art scene that was going on during the 50s and 60s. So because of that, I wanted to make the novel look a little bit classic and kind of allude to that time period. So I ended up hand painting all of these, about 36 black and white interior illustrations. And here is just a little peek at what that looked like. See if I can speed it up a little bit, and then almost done. And that is how the final piece looked for Mysterious Messenger. This is the scene outside of my building. When I would walk out of my apartment building, I could see the Brooklyn Public Library, the small structure to the right, and then some of the buildings across the street. That is me in silhouette walking my dog, and this is just a typical chapter opener illustration that was in the novel. And here are a couple more. And then these are some of the double page spreads. And this is my dining room table with all of the work shown on it. It was 36 illustrations. I would scan them, fix them up in Photoshop, and send them on their merry way to the publisher. And Macmillan did a fabulous job on designing this. You can see there's a drop cap for the S, and then we would put a chapter opener illustration to the left of every beginning of a chapter. Some of the cover sketches, at first we were going to call it Kindred Spirits, but the publisher felt like Kindred was a little bit too adult for children. So we decided to name it The Treasure Inside. And this is one of the cover illustrations. We were going to include a belly band, so that's about half of a wraparound cover. And it's the purple with the treasure inside. And underneath that would have been more windows of what was going on, little scenes of the story. And here are a couple more of these sketches. And what happened was they decided that Treasure Inside sounded a little bit too sweet. So we decided to change it to The Mysterious Messenger of Clinton Hill, or The Clinton Hill Heist. And after debating a little bit, they ended up settling on sketch 4, The Mysterious Messenger, and dropping The Clinton Hill. And this is what the final illustration looked like for the cover. There's also audio for the book, so I'll just go through really quickly to show you. Lori Felipe Birkin does a great job, and she's just—
Why did you follow me again? Asked Maria. I told you to go away. I was making sure you were all right.
Anyway, she's great. She does all the voices. And this is the final cover that we ended up going with. And then these are some of the advertisements. So here is Madame d'Estaing and the widow, Mrs. Fisher, and then Maria and Sebastian out in front of their stoop. And then these are some of the other advertisements. And that is it. So I'm going to stop the share. Are you there, Mary? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, there I am.
Okay.
There's that little lag time.
Okay, yeah.
Gilbert, that was so interesting. And I think you gave our audience a good sense of all the layers and levels of writing and revising and drawing and painting and then revising all that all over again. It was fascinating. And when you showed the covers, I just sort of honed in on the one that actually did become the cover. And it just kind of reaches out and grabs you, like you want to know what's going on in those townhouses. And then the title itself, The Mysterious Messenger. You know, Gilbert, the first time I started reading your manuscript at Vermont College, I was so intrigued because there was something about the writing that reminded me of Roald Dahl. You know, the caretakers that are extremely neglectful, you know, these villainous extreme adults, an extreme situation, sort of a darkly comic tone. I thought that your book had a lot more heart and poignancy than Roald Dahl's does, but would you consider Roald Dahl, you know, a childhood influence? Did you read a lot of his work?
I did. I read a lot of Roald Dahl. So I think it started with a teacher reading it to us in 3rd grade. We read the BFG and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And then on my own, I read The Witches and Matilda and then The Twits and then all of his other books. And then even as an adult, or not adult, but going into college, I read his short stories for adults, the, what was it called? Tales of the Unexpected. And yeah, so I do love Roald Dahl. So
yeah, your book is so distinctly Gilbert, but that sort of darkly comic extreme situation seems very, very much in line with his work. And you know, the whole idea of a psychic and who is also, you know, a scam artist and seances, you have a seance in the book as well. When you were doing research for it, did you actually visit a psychic or did you go to a seance?
I did. I went to a bunch.
Oh boy!
On the rage. In Brooklyn, it's on the rage. It's like everybody, it was everywhere from going to can you hear me?
Yes.
Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, I went to one. Let's see, there was one at a museum where they had 2 psychics in from Lilydale that wanted to that were going to tell everybody show everybody their relatives. So we get there and we're in a basement and they're all lined up and there's like maybe me and then there's one other children's book author who happened to be at the same thing. And I'm like, how did he find out about this? We listened to them, you know, they give us a spiel how, you know, the relatives are going to show up and they're going to, you know, we're going to have to raise our hand and tell them that that's our relative. We're going to have to claim them. So they start listing they're like, oh, I have a man here who is in his 70s and he's Polish. And the children's book writer next to me was like, oh, it's my grandfather. And they're like, your grandfather says their next project you're working on is going to be a hit. And he's like, yes. And I'm looking like, what on earth? And they like, I have a woman here in her 60s who baked an apple pie, and someone screamed Aunt Marge. And it began to feel like basement bingo with the spirits. You know, you're waiting there, they're kind of, and then they would give you like a little message from the spirit, you know, like always floss your teeth. You know, I didn't do that or whatever. But so that was one of them I went to. And then there were also YouTube ones that would tell you a story. And yeah, I researched a lot of them. There you have it.
Wow. There's nothing like experiential research, like actually being in the room and talking to a psychic and going through your own fake seance.
Can you hear me?
And you also did a lot of research into the beats. And I was curious to know whether you had a favorite beat poet, you know, Jack Kerouac or Allen Ginsberg or Lawrence from Getty.
Yeah. In high school and college, I liked the beats. So I liked, you know, obviously Howl, the poem. And I think I was actually researching them because you were teaching me a little bit about poetry. And we had thought maybe doing a picture book biography on one of them. So I may have been researching them for that. And then I was kind of intrigued because Kerouac was sort of interested in Eastern religion stuff with meditation and writing on a continuous flow of a scroll. And I was kind of interested in that at the same time. So it's just, for whatever reason, they stuck with me and they just ended up in the novel and not in the picture book.
Wow. But it still is a really good idea for a picture book, like a picture book biography.
Yeah, their lives are crazy though.
Yeah.
I was reading about it. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah.
Still, you know, I could just picture Jack Kerouac and On the Road sort of in picture book biographical form. Very, very intriguing project.
Outfitters.
Now, Gilbert, when you were doing the writing, and this, you know, was your first novel, and like, wow, big congratulations. What did you find like to be the greatest challenge? And was there anything, again, as you were writing that surprised you?
Okay. So the greatest challenge, well, when I first came to you, I didn't really understand about narrowing psychic distance, and you kind of helped me figure out what that was. So just learning how to do that, how to pull out and then pull into the character's mind and sort of know when you needed to check in with the reader to let them know what the character was feeling was something that it was a new concept to me. But once I picked that up, I would say the thing that surprised me was that I made it through to the end of the novel. Before that, I had only written poetry and picture books, and picture books are a lot shorter. And I just, you know, to me, it was magic that someone could last, you know, longer than 20 pages. So yeah, I made it through it. And I have to say it was probably you and the program at VCFA that helped me do that. And there you have it.
Well, we all loved working with you, Gilbert. And, you know, Gilbert, we know that you travel a lot and you give lots of school visits. You talk to kids about writing and you talk to kids about illustrating. And you also were our visiting author-illustrator this past January and shared your process and some tips with our current students. We really appreciated that. And you're going to be entering a program in art education, a graduate program in art education in the fall. And you know, I'm just wondering, we've got an audience out there, probably people who are interested in writing and illustrating themselves. When you talk to schools, are there any tips that you share with kids?
Let's see. When I talk to schools, right now I'm working with the National Book Foundation and I teach middle school kids. So what we do is we try and combine writing, drawing, and illustrating, and then acting too. So that's sort of here, let me sit down. I'm up at the front just in case the computer comes up. So that's what we've been doing. We'll read like 20 pages of a middle grade novel. I think the last one we did was Pablo Cortaya's The Epic Fail of the Arturo Zamora, and the class loved it. And then they would write an assignment in response to what they were reading about the family. So I think they wrote about a family dinner, and then they would divide into groups. And then after one of them wrote about the family dinner, the next one would illustrate it, and then the third person in the group would act it out for the class. So that's kind of what I've been doing with the students that I have been teaching up until the pandemic. But if I go and visit schools and I tell kids what they should be doing to draw or write, I think a lot of it is just to read as much as possible, and to go as many museums and take in as much culture as you can, and then practice. I think practice is a big part of it, and just creating a schedule so that you stay on it, and just keep doing it, because it's really about longevity.
Yes, yeah, and persistence is everything too. And what you're doing with the students in the classroom too just sounds so dynamic and interesting, because of course the performance aspect would just bring those characters to life, like you would feel them as three-dimensional beings because somebody would be acting them out. And so, so here's a question that I'm really curious about. My favorite character was Houdini, as you know, because I bring that up frequently. I really like that chatty parrot. Did you have a favorite character, like somebody that you just felt was so much fun to put on the page, either writing or drawing or both?
So as far as writing the character, I think it was either Maria or Mrs. Fisher. And I identified with Maria, but I think Mrs. Fisher is who I figured that would be basically me when I was her age. I was like, oh, she's going to have a big table with a lot of books, and she's going to travel here and here and here and here. So that was sort of, but as far as drawing somebody, I really enjoyed drawing Madame Destine. And that is because I was watching the news while I was running on a treadmill one night, and they were having an interview with Tanya Harding, the ice skater, and they brought her mother up on the screen, and she was wearing her mother was wearing a big old fur coat with a parrot on it, and she just seemed angry and just kind of mean. And I thought, wow, she would make a really great villainess. But this is before I even did writing school. So as soon as I knew that the psychic was going to be a villain, I was like, oh, it's going to be her mixed with Tanya Harding's mother, and that's going to be it. So that is where it came from.
In Madame Destine, with her turban and with her flamboyant furs, I mean, she was just such a delicious character, like just this sort of flamboyant, over-the-top villainess that was just so much fun. Whenever she showed up on the page, you're just like, yes, I love to hate her. Would you like to draw her for us? We would love to see her come to life on your easel.
Let's see if I can bring it up and do a drawing so that everybody's on the same page with what she looked like. Can you see is it too close? Can you see it?
That looks good, yeah.
So here we go. Madame Destine has bangs. She's got a turban. She's got evil eyebrows. The nose. Can you see it? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
And then a devilish smile. And then she's got this face. She always wears a fur coat, a necklace, and she's got one particular pet. And it's sitting on her shoulder. He's got eyes, feathers on his head, a beak, and wings. And his name is Houdini. So that is Madame Justine. Can you see it?
Yes, that is wonderful. And thank you for including Houdini.
Yeah, I included Houdini because I know that you like that parrot.
I do. He's just my favorite character. And it was so much fun to read the book when it came out and to see again scenes that I had enjoyed when you were working on it in draft form, including poor Maria cleaning the bird cage.
Yeah. You know, I got in trouble for scrubbing the cage with ammonia. The librarian across the street that I'm friends with, they take care of all the animals in Clinton Hill. And she's like, I read the book and I just wanted to tell you that they should not clean the cage with ammonia. It should be dishwashing soap because the ammonia will make the parrot die. So it was like, we had to quickly, like, that was the last thing we edited out. And it was like, stop the press, like, you can kill the parrot.
That would introduce a whole new plot element into the mysterious messenger. What happened to that noisy parrot anyway?
Remember how she was using ammonia? Well, I think it didn't fare well for Houdini.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Well, I know we're getting ready to segue soon into Q&A. And our audience members, some of you may have questions for Gilbert, so you can put them in the Q&A and we'll be sure to ask them. Gilbert, I know you're working on your second novel at this point. Is it anything that you can talk about, or is there a little teaser that you can give us? Or do you have to be completely mum about it?
Can give you a tiny teaser because I've written the rough draft and I've turned it into the editor, but I have not heard whether she approves it or not. So it does take place in New York City. It does take place in Astoria, Queens, and there may have something to do with the knife sharpening van, or the man who sharpens knives in his van. They have them all over New York City, and it may have something to do with private detectives and a kidnapping. So there you have it.
This sounds very exciting, and it sounds like a twisty, turny, intriguing plot, like Mysterious Messenger too. And so the characters, you probably already have them in mind and are drawing them or sketching them out. That's great.
I haven't.
Is there an animal?
Is there an animal? No, I forgot to include an animal.
Yes, please include an animal.
I think that animal is replaced by the smartphone. I'm sorry to tell you, Mary. It's just the nature of things.
Well, Mrs. Fisher had a cat. I remember. Yes, yes.
The cat was fun. I don't know. Maybe I have to conclude. Maybe that's going to be the first thing in the editorial letter is, Gilbert, where are the animals?
Where are the animals?
We'll see.
Your fans are asking about animals. Include an animal character.
Exactly.
Well, Gilbert, we're about ready to segue into the Q&A, and I can already see that we have several people who have questions that they're burning to ask you. Before we move into Q&A, is there anything else that you'd like to bring up or add?
Oh, goodness. No, not that I can think of. Thank you for interviewing me, though, for this. And I'd like to thank Politics and Prose for having me, and then Margaret for putting it together. I know this is probably the only time I'm going to be able to say it before it is, so I just say it now.
Yes, I feel the same way. It was just such a treat to be able to talk with you on screen, Gilbert, and I'm just so excited for you that you've gone on to become a very talented author of nonfiction. You know, have done book covers for other people, but, you know, to really see you embracing the whole vision, the writing and the art, and bringing that together in different forms, you know, nonfiction, novels, I hope a picture book biography of one of those beat poets, but just planning that idea. But yeah, just great to see you. And again, thank you so much to Margaret and Carolyn and Politics and Prose. And okay, and so let's head over to the Q&A. Oh, and also, Gilbert, because some people, we know them, I'm also going to read their names. So we can both be glad that they were able to show up. So let's see, this question is from Evan Griffith. Evan, we're so glad that you could be with us here tonight. Evan says, I was intrigued by the glimpse of your Scrivener screen. Can you talk a bit more about how you plotted or outlined your novel, which is often a very daunting process for writers? I think Gilbert might have frozen. Gilbert? Let's see. We talked about the possibility of this happening because there have been some bad storms. Gilbert's in Mississippi, and there have been some bad storms, so he may have cut out, and he hopefully will be able to rejoin us. And so we'll just wait a little bit for Gilbert. And as we're waiting, and hopefully he will pop up onto screen soon, I had the best time putting together a backdrop of that sort of celebrates Gilbert's novel and some of his other work. So there is a bird cage for the parrot Houdini. There is a tiny crystal ball that is actually a snow globe. Copy of the Beat Classic, On the Road by Jack Kerouac. And then Gilbert's wonderful nonfiction book that came out a few years ago, The Marvelous Thing That Came from a Spring. And that is about the slinky. He also had a very acclaimed and intriguing nonfiction book that he authored and illustrated called, I think it was called That's the Way the Cookie Crumbled. And it is about the invention of the chocolate chip cookie. So I thought that was such a neat idea.
Ah, there's Gilbert.
There you are, Gilbert.
I came back on and I was going to interview you, Mary, about working with Gilbert, but I'm going to go away now and you and Gilbert can do the Q&A.
Yes, yes. Gilbert, it's so good to see you back again. So just to get back to Evan Griffith's question, Evan said that he was intrigued by the glimpse of your Scrivener screen and was wondering if you could talk a bit more about how you plotted and outlined your novel, which is often a very daunting process for writers.
Okay. So we probably wrote about 30 or 40 pages, and then you asked me to come up with a very loose outline of kind of just a general ballpark of where your novel was going to go. So I did that, and then I knew the middle grade chapter books that I typically illustrated were about 30 chapters usually. So I just decided to make sure that it would happen within 30 chapters or around that amount. And then I just gave enough stuff and moved it around so that it would fit within those 30 chapters, like enough things to hit, but keep it vague enough so that there can be some surprises so that you're not just following an outline. Like, I don't really like to work on an outline. And I think you taught me that. So I can thank you, Mary, for that.
Oh, Gilbert, you were just such a treat to work with. And what you say about keeping the outline flexible is so important, because we're always surprised by our writing, and you want to certainly leave room for that. We have another question. This is from Kelly Dykstra House, another Vermont College alum. Great to see you on screen, Kelly. And Kelly says, "This is fantastic, Gilbert. I am fascinated that you started drawing Madame Destine with her bangs. Do you always? Do you start drawing each character differently?"
No, I usually start with the hair because I don't have any. So it's the first thing that comes. I was like, oh, she has bangs. Those are nice. Remember when you had bangs? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, that's great. We have another question. This is from Emily Burak, who is also a Vermont College alum. See, Gilbert, you have so many fans that are just happy to see you here and celebrate your book. And she just wanted to congratulate you on your book. So thank you, Emily. Let's see, we have a question from Rachel. Rachel says, "I enjoyed your writing style, especially your verbs. The grape soda wept off the table. It seems that you have fun in the process of writing. Do you have a certain ritual to get into a writing mood before you start?" Oh, that's such an interesting question.
You have a ritual. Yeah, okay. So when I was in Clinton Hill, I did have a ritual. I would go and get a cup of coffee, but I wouldn't make it at home. I had to gather myself on my way to getting the coffee and bringing it back, and then I would work. But for whatever reason, that just helped. Like doing that little ritual of walking down the street, ordering it, and sipping it on the way back, and knowing what I was going to start just kind of helped me mentally prepare to write.
Yeah, and Rachel, so, you know, Rachel, you're so right. Like there were certain details that just grabbed, I think, all of us readers. Some of my favorites were what poor Maria was forced to eat, like all this junk food, ding dongs and beef jerky. Those seem to be like her go-to snacks. That was all that her mother would feed her. Do you like ding dongs and beef jerky, Gilbert?
No, I didn't. And you know, I don't know why I did that. Why she cooks a jar of salsa. Like I'm not really sure what made me do that. I think I wasn't eating junk food, but I decided since I was making the villains just so obviously bad in this book, like I would just include that they feed them junk food, even though it's just to sort of like hammer in the fact that they're just sort of outrageous in this story.
Yes. So, yes. And poor Maria, she just wanted lasagna, which she didn't know how to eat. This is a question from Donna. And Donna asks, "What do you do with all of the artwork once you finish the book?"
Oh, I keep, well, for this art, since it's not digital, I ended up just saving it, and I put it in a big flat file. And I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I think I'm just going to hold on to it, and hopefully it'll survive a couple of moves.
Yeah. Here is a question from Chair K, who asks, "Do you think being your own illustrator makes your job as an author easier or harder?"
Well, for this book, I thought that they wanted me to illustrate. I thought that was why they bought the novel. So I was assumed that I would be doing the interior illustrations for the book. And it turned out that that was not what but I had to ask them to do that plan. I think they had planned on just like maybe 5 illustrations. So I think I made it harder by being an illustrator because I kept wanting to add to it, and I had to ask permission to do it. And then the cover, the covers I just love doing. So does that answer the question?
Yes, and also, you know, just how much the art adds to the reading experience. Like I loved seeing those double page spreads and poring over all the details that are in the art too. It added a lot to the atmosphere of the book. So this is a question from Katie G, who asks, what is the difference between writing and illustrating a book and illustrating another person's writing?
Hi.
Did you get that question, Gilbert, or you want me to repeat it?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay, great. It didn't say in the audio. I didn't hear the question.
Okay. Katie G asks, what is the difference between writing and illustrating a book and illustrating another person's writing?
Well, I don't know. What's the difference? Well, one thing is I get to enjoy somebody else's novel if I'm illustrating theirs. And I do enjoy illustrating other people's books and giving them a good cover, or doing the interior illustrations. I usually get to see the rough drafts and the final, like once the book is done. So I enjoy seeing how the story has changed a little bit. And I just, for me, it's like, I just am a big fan of middle grade. Try to help, especially a first time author, and just see how the whole thing is put together. For me, as a writer doing my own illustrations, it's a little bit harder because I'm harder to please, and I worry that it has to be better than the others, which is dumb, but that's just how it is. It's just I put more pressure on myself, but I love doing them both.
Yeah.
I really do.
And it's neat that you have the skills so that you can move back and forth amongst many different types of genres and projects too, Gilbert. You were so helpful when you were the visiting author illustrator at Vermont College, and you co-taught the picture book class that I was teaching with another faculty member, Jane Kurtz. And Gilbert had all of us think about a nonfiction project, and he asked us some questions. And Gilbert, I told you at the time, and I will just say it again, I am so grateful for that exercise because I actually got something jump-started from that I've continued working on. So really? Thank you. Okay. Let's see, and maybe we have time for one or two more questions. Here is a question from another Vermont College alum and friend, Susan Korchak, who says, can't wait for my copy of The Mysterious Messenger to arrive. And her question is, did you model the librarian character on a particular librarian?
No, I didn't. I didn't do that for a reason, because I'm friends with the librarians at the Clinton Hill Library. So I didn't want her to be like, it would just be too weird. Like, in fact, when the book came out, I had to go by the library and just tell them so they would know that the library is heavily featured, but that it wasn't based off of any of them. I ended up naming one of the characters, Shania Goldstein, is a friend of mine, Shania, and she looks a little bit like her. So I realized once I had done that I just don't want to put my friends in novels. Like, I kind of want to bury it a little bit more, if that makes sense. But she was okay. Like, my friend Shania was fine. But if it had been the librarian and it had been too much like her, it would have been bordered on creepy, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Here's a question from Azadeh Westergaard, who loved your presentation, Gilbert. And she says that basically you have illustrated all of her children's favorite books. Wow, that is a big compliment. So she was curious as to how you chose what to illustrate for this book versus how one might approach the illustration for a picture book. So in other words, like with a picture book, you're thinking about pictures on every page. How was that different from illustrating a novel?
So for this chapter book, this novel where I just did chapters for an illustration for every chapter, it was mostly just to give the kid whet their appetite for reading further. So it doesn't actually add anything more to the novel because I just felt like it wouldn't work as an audiobook, and I hoped that it would become an audiobook. So that was, so I just kind of whet their appetite for what was coming in the chapter, so they would keep reading, and that was it. I mean, that was my reasoning for it. So it's usually the most interesting scene per chapter to keep the child reading.
Yes, yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. And why don't we finish up with a question from Marianne Murphy, another Vermont College alum and friend. And Marianne says, this is such a wonderful presentation. And she's wondering, what are we both working on now, if we can talk about it? And I can just say that I am working on the project that Gilbert helped me jumpstart back in January. It requires a lot of research, which I'm really enjoying. So, so thank you, Gilbert. It's been keeping me busy. And what are you working on, Gilbert?
Can you talk about it a little bit, like what the subject is, or is it top secret?
It's sort of top secret, Gilbert, because like I'm so excited about it that I don't want it to slip out and somebody else to say, what a great idea. How about you? What are you working on?
Well,
if you can talk about it.
I have the middle grade novel that I did talk about. You did manage to get a couple
Right.
of now. And then I can't, like, the rest is just, yeah, I can't talk about it.
Okay.
My agent asked me to do a nonfiction, but then I was like, okay, I'll get all the books for it. But then if I say what it's on, then, you know, everyone will jump onto it. So. Doesn't it feel like that with nonfiction though? Like, it's like if you get the idea, you need to keep secret until it gets sold, and then you tell everybody. Just in case.
Yeah, I know. I kind of check Amazon periodically just to make sure that nobody else is coming out with a book about my idea.
Yeah.
So, Margaret, thank you so much. You're back on screen.
We can't hear her.
Here we go. Now I'm live, I hope. Thank you both so much. It's really great to hear about the process and to hear you in conversation together, since you work so closely together on this book. And congratulations on its publication. That's all the time we have tonight, but just thank you again for coming on and telling, having the opportunity to talk about your book for our viewers. And I do want to remind our viewers that they can still click the link in the chat button so they can purchase a copy of Gilbert's book. Please check our website for updated event listings, and you can follow the Children and Teens Department on social media under @KidsInProse. And I think that kind of wraps it up for this evening. So again, thank you, Mary and Gilbert, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, viewers, for joining us. And we hope to see you again soon.
Oh, thanks so much, Margaret. Great to see you, Gilbert. All the best with your secret projects.